Hello everybody and welcome to What Culture Gaming. I'm Ben from What Culture Gaming.
I'm Scott from What Culture Gaming.
And we have some stats and facts about the Xbox. Is it Xbox Scorpio or just Scorpio?
Right now it is Project Scorpio because they refuse to give it a proper name. Oh, that's maybe what it's going to be called. I guess that kind of has some Google traction.
Were we sort of expecting that kind of big news today in terms of a name?
It's a little bit weird because the whole thing was, the other day it was like, right, we're going to be doing this big reveal event at 2 o'clock, BST or whatever. And then it got around to like 1:30 and Eurogamer were like, just to clarify, it's not a live stream. We've not got a whole lot. It's an article. Don't worry about it. It's a few videos. And everyone kind of went, all right then, yeah.
Right.
But, and so that's all we've got. We don't have, specifics. I imagine it's going to be at E3 because Microsoft have their own thing. But they've revealed quite a lot, which has got me quite excited, being that I was a huge 360 fanboy.
Okay.
So, one of the big things is that they're carrying forward the backwards compatible stuff from the Xbox One.
That's great.
So, which is great. So they're going to play everything from Xbox One games and all Xbox 360 games. It'll just run them. You don't need to pay anything. You don't need to pay a monthly fee like the PS4. It's the same implementation that's on the Xbox One right now. If you just put a disc in, it just works.
Right.
So for me, that's pretty huge because that puts them ahead of Sony and Nintendo because both the PS4 and the Switch don't play their respectively previous consoles games.
Unfortunately not, no.
So that was quite a big one.
Yes.
Another thing is that they've said any games that you'll put in will immediately get a performance boost because this is where my naivete comes in. I'm not a PC gamer at all.
Right. Okay.
How much do you know about the way games run?
Nothing.
Awesome.
I'm wearing a T-shirt from when I worked in game development, but I couldn't answer that.
Those guys would know.
I'm sure they would. Someone there would.
So the way I understand it, and I'm going to get crucified if I get this wrong, is that developers make a game and they go for a target resolution and a target frame rate capacity, and then they put that onto a console, and the console does its damnedest to try and match that intended resolution or that intended frame rate.
Okay.
And when you see frame rate drops or a game messing up, that's the console's fault for the most part. That tends to be the console's fault.
That sounds about right, but that also raises a bigger issue that I have about this whole, because it went on Digital Foundry, right?
Yes.
And what you said in a message to me when you said we should do a video about this was that they're clearly trying to go after the spec invested crowd.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people truly, honestly care about this stuff. If it's a significant number of people, because people do care about it. That's why Digital Foundry exists and why it does so well, and that's fantastic. But for people like you and me, the fact that we can't even talk about the frame rate stuff, it just goes to show how the average punter, and we're not even the average punter, looks at that and thinks, great.
The thing is
that great?
Yes, it is great. That's the thing. That's okay because to be completely honest, I don't follow the Digital Foundry videos that often. I'll only check into them if I want to compare a specific game across multiple platforms. Okay. But the way that they've done this, because they're focusing on legacy and because they're focusing on any game will get an uptick, like you can literally sell it as this game will play your games better than the competition, which is the thing that the PS4 Pro completely fell down on.
Right.
Because that's true. A lot of people didn't care about the PS4 Pro, me included or us included, and it failed. I mean, like Sony have been very remiss to talk about that thing's sales numbers other than to say, we believe it's doing well. It's done as well as the Slim. And it's like, if it was doing well...
I don't know anyone with a Slim, but I do know one person with a Pro.
Oh, well.
And even then, I was just like, what are you doing? You've got a PS4. I don't understand why anyone would upgrade from PS4.
Well, because for want of a better word, Sony pretty much fucked up the whole advertising it, giving you a core reason to buy this thing. Regardless of the fact that it's all mired in stats and frame rate boosts and all these statistics, Microsoft have literally gone, buy this system and it will reward you with a better playing discography. All the games you've already bought, 360 games, Xbox One games, they all play better just by putting them into the system. You don't need to fiddle with the menus, it just works better.
But then what is it? And that's great. But what does this mean for the Xbox One? Is it, because they haven't given it a name yet?
No.
Is it a new console? Will it play games that the Xbox One can't? Or what is this? Is it just a properly backwards compatible Xbox One that's more powerful? In which case, that's kind of confusing if they're not going to name it something that would clearly advertise.
I know. I mean, I think the way that they pitched it last year when they first revealed, I think it was last year whenever they first mentioned it, was that yes, it's a modular upgrade and that it'll be this thing that is just, if you're one of those people who loves to focus on 4K TVs and you want, the up-res experience, you want the mightiest thing out there, it's for you.
Right.
And I think that is where Sony fell down because those people aren't the majority. And time will tell whether they can distinguish it enough in the marketing, but I do think that there's a more defined sort of end game with this. There are more defined end results for it kind of thing.
Okay. What do you think of the fact that, and again, this was something else that you mentioned earlier, is that they seem to be going after the multi-platform crowd and saying, hey, all the games that are available for all consoles are going to be better here.
Yes.
Is that going to be enough to tempt people to buy this inevitably more expensive console when they might already be happy on, for example, PlayStation 4 because they've got exclusive games there that they like? Is that big enough of a draw to bring people over?
I don't know. That's going to be one of the most interesting things because a lot of people in the last generation, a lot of people were 360 owners, and I personally believe that a lot of people jumped to PS4 because Microsoft messed up so badly with the Xbox One.
It was rough.
And there's a lot of brand loyalty to PlayStation, which obviously Sony then capitalized on with all the for the player stuff. But I still think that if Microsoft had nailed the initial unveiling of the Xbox One, all that momentum from last generation would have just carried on through.
Right.
So I think a lot of people have that inside them where they want Xbox to be a good brand. And the Xbox One S, the sales have ticked up a little bit since they released that. And there's a lot of variables in how many people own 4K TVs and are really going to get the most out of it. Yeah. And are you going to go and buy an Xbox Scorpio if you've already got PS4? I don't know, man. I'm probably not, but it
depends if you've got. I suppose the real selling point here is the backwards compatibility.
Which is a weird thing, really.
If you jump to PS4 and you have a huge stack of Xbox 360 games that you for some reason haven't sold yet, then the temptation's there, I suppose, but then it has to be a reasonable price. And there are rumours of this thing costing upwards of like 500 quid, which is worrying.
Yes, that was one of the things that they didn't address at all in this thing. Obviously, the information comes from Eurogamer, who visited Microsoft. It's not coming from Microsoft. So, they haven't even talked about price or that kind of thing.
Right.
But, it's going to have to be competitive. They're going right up against... the Xbox One S is down to about 180, if not... it's about 200, 180-ish.
Right.
So it's depending on how distinguished they make the Scorpio feel, their own... they're going to eat themselves alive if their own console is worthwhile. Yeah. But in terms of, the pull, it's weird because, say you buy when we made the jump from videos to DVDs and DVDs to Blu-rays and then whatever, it's they were kind of, the jump from DVDs to Blu-rays, I remember Sony being everyone's going to rebuy all their collection. And all of us went, no, we're not. We'll buy new stuff. And it's just but if they had a system or something that would take DVDs and output them in HD, that would have sold pretty well. There's something in rewarding a consumer for the amount of faith they've already placed in that brand.
Right.
And I really love the fact, if there's one big takeaway, it's that Microsoft have acknowledged that backwards compatibility and legacy is very important, which is one of the things that really annoyed me about the PS4. So I was why can't I play? The PlayStation library is arguably maybe even better than Nintendo's in terms of the history of it. Right. I know, bold
that's a bold statement.
Aguan. Okay. But, the fact that they have all those games to play and they don't play on it.
The fact I have to go from my living room to my bedroom to start up my PS3 to play PS2 classics and PS1 classics is crazy.
Unless you want to buy, do you want a £20 HD remaster? Do you want a new Crash?
Not really.
No, you don't.
Not really. One thing some people might be bearing in mind about this whole scenario is using it as a home entertainment system. Because I've spoken to people about the PS4 Pro, and they were very disheartened to learn that it won't support. What's the next level after Blu-ray that they're doing? The
4K.
The 4K. It won't support 4K Blu-ray stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas what I understand is that the Scorpio will.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So that could also be a big selling point.
Totally.
But again, it depends if that's going to be, similarly to how the PS3 was at the time, a more affordable 4K Blu-ray player than just getting a 4K Blu-ray player.
Yeah, and my gut instinct tells me that the vast majority of people haven't bought 4K TVs and don't care about 4K resolution. It's a nice buzzword, but I just think we've got to a point in resolutions across the board where there's only so far you can go. And you only needed to look at the PS4 Pro's unveiling where they were you had Mark Cerny being all there's volumetric lighting rays, and if you look in the background...
Volumetric. Yes. Volumetric.
Hello. Yeah. There was all that, and that stuff didn't land. The general reception to that conference was, we don't care.
It's so hard to tell, though. That's the thing. You can look at an early HD TV running a PS3 game compared to an HD TV now that isn't 4K playing, and you can see the difference.
Yeah.
But ultimately, my big thing is that, you're right, the difference is getting smaller.
Yes.
And you can see the difference when you put it side by side, but it's the same thing as when you go to the cinema and when you're watching a film on your laptop. After maybe a minute, you'll forget how big the screen is. You'll forget how clear the image is because you'll be focused on what's happening. It's inevitably not as important as people make it out to be.
I agree, but I think, it is, and that's the thing. It genuinely, if the games are good enough, it doesn't necessarily matter about these more minuscule things.
Right.
I just think that those minuscule things were blown up to be the major selling point for the PS4 Pro. And I think you had to go to the likes of Digital Foundry to compare, all those side-by-sides that we've seen, the fact that we talk about it disparagingly, because we don't care. Side-by-side, you go, if you look really closely, that's that. You don't You don't care.
Like how many more colors there are.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, look at like this slight thing. But if what they're talking about comes true and everything you just put in, I mean, in the Digital Foundry video, they talk about how a lot of the way the Scorpio is wired up just does all the heavy lifting for you. You don't need to hop in the settings and, you don't need to toggle on HDR or you don't need to, bother with chromatic aberration or isometric tropic bollocks. You just put the game in and it does the better thing, which is what console people want.
Yeah,
they don't want
true.
PC crap. And I have to believe that Microsoft are more than aware of that because the PS4 Pro's jump from PS4 wasn't good enough. It wasn't enough.
Right.
You couldn't until they released that boost mode, which is very recent when they've made it so that the PS4 just outputs the maximum GPU or whatever.
For
every game.
Yeah.
Then you start seeing differences and games start outputting at 60 frames per second. They've only just done that months later. That wasn't part of their marketing push, and that wasn't part of the whole. Because that's the same thing. That the both of these consoles will reward. I can't say will reward very well. Both of these consoles will reward your existing discographies, by making them output better. But Microsoft are nailing the messaging a lot better, and they've opened with that.
It certainly seems like the Scorpio is doing what the PS4 Pro aimed to do much better in every sense.
Yes.
But I'm still worried that the apathetic reaction from players is going to be the same.
Maybe.
Sony said when they first showed off the PS4 Pro, we realized this is going to be for core audiences.
Yes.
We're not going to be able to get the mainstream with this. But I'm the core audience, and I don't care.
Because they didn't give you a reason to care.
Exactly. There's nothing there for me apart from a reason to have to upgrade my TV and spend even more money on a new console that I already have.
Which ties back into another thing from the Foundry video is that they've said regardless of what TV you have, you'll see a market improvement, whether that's a resolution boost, not to 4K if you don't have a 4K TV, but you'll see the frame rate will improve, or you'll see
Imagine
better
buying a
rendering.
Scorpio and not having a.
Well, that's another thing. That was one of the reasons that a lot of people scoffed at the PS4 Pro because they immediately went, well, I'm not going to buy the TV to go with it.
Yeah.
But the way that Microsoft are playing it is backwards compatibility and the upgrades on just 4K resolutions. You will get better frame rates. You will get a better experience for X game, regardless of whether it's Burnout 3, Rise of the Tomb Raider, whatever. Anything that's been on the Xbox One, and Xbox 360 will see an improvement. That's a hell of a sell.
That's a big statement, and from with Digital Foundry behind it as well, you've got to believe that there's an element of truth to that because that's kind of what they do.
So in terms of another new feature that they're going to add, you've always been able to take videos and share them and do whatever on the PS4 and on the Xbox One. They're going to be adding 4K 60 frames per second version of that.
Wow,
but I don't know if you can stream. So it seems
if your internet could handle.
Well, there's always that. That's like the big roadblock on all this stuff. But yeah, and they're also going to be including a frame-by-frame scroll, so you can take specific screenshots and things like that.
Nice.
I don't know if they've amended the whole Xbox capture that thing. On PS4, you hit the button and it takes like 15 minutes, and it's good. Yeah. And you can go back and find it. On Xbox, you've got to double tap the button and then find a thing and be like, oh, Xbox, record that, and it doesn't always get the segment that you want.
Oh, that's annoying.
It's just the Xbox One's UI is a tire fire. But, but whatever, hopefully they're going to amend that. Speaking of the UI,
yes,
all the menus and the user interface in general is going to output at 4K. So
good.
Because one of the biggest things with this is that they want native 4K to come across, regardless of whether you're in the menus, in a game, in an app, or whatever else.
Okay.
Because on the PS4 Pro, you've got to flick on HDR. And then you've got to faff about with the boost mode and things like that to get the best possible picture.
Yeah.
Whereas it feels like the direction that they're going with this is just plug and go, we'll figure it out. Because console people don't want to faff in menus. We do not want to do it.
That's true. I mean, that was the one thing that among a couple of other niggles, that really annoyed me about the PlayStation TV.
Oh, yes.
The Vita... PlayStation Vita compressed into a little box with an HDMI socket in the back that you can plug into your TV, play Vita games, that kind of stuff. The UI for that is literally the Vita UI, but just stretched and scaled up to your TV. So it's weirdly blurry, and it's like you guys knew what this box was going to be used for, right? It doesn't plug into a screen this big like the Vita. You could have at least given it either a lick of paint or just a slight redesign to make it fit. But this is logical.
In theory, I mean, they've talked about, regardless of whether you're playing even a 360 game, they want to upscale that thing to 4K, which in my head doesn't make sense because those games were never made to be at 4K. But I'm not techie enough to figure that out, and someone else is probably already screaming at the TV about how that's done. But they basically want to give you a 4K parity across everything that you're doing on the Scorpio. So if you've bought a fancy new TV, this system will reward every part of that more than the PS4 Pro would, because it's on the PS4 Pro. Sometimes certain apps wouldn't do 4K or menu screens or certain games, whatever. This thing is upscaling everything and continuing even the Xbox One's playability of certain 360 games. It would upscale the frame rate on them, which all carries forward, which is really cool. Oh, one of the other things is you might be thinking that all of this is going to output a hell of a lot of power and a lot of heat. So they've included a vapor chamber, which PC people will know, but I didn't. It's a thing.
That sounds exciting.
It is. It's really, really cool. Apparently, it's a thing that comes with a lot of new graphics cards. GTX cards, PC people will know, have vapor chambers on, and apparently they offset a lot of the heat. This is the first time that a vapor chamber has been made as part of a mass consumer product, which apparently is like some breakthrough thing.
Is that potentially going to add to the cost of the unit?
We don't know, because they're not talking about cost yet. I'd imagine we're going to get hit in the face with that at E3.
Oh, it's going to be that. Let's hope it's reasonable.
I mean, the thing is, it has to be competitive. Like they're going up against their own Xbox One S and the PS4 Pro, and it's like even with more months gone by, and it's not like Sony aren't aware of all this stuff happening. So all they need to do is discount the PS4 Pro. So as much as this thing is a like a big heavy duty heavyweight contender, whatever, it is literally on paper the world's most powerful console. They need it to be competitive. So whether that means like the PS3 they make a loss, I don't know.
Yeah, of course.
So one of the biggest things going forward, and this is the thing that I'm not really able to understand with my primitive mind, my console peasant mind can't do this. But they mentioned in the Foundry video that Microsoft are planning, it was like 60 particular upgrades to the system going forward. Obviously, they're going to be like patches or whatever. But these things are supposed to fall in line with how developers are going to adapt to the system across the coming months. In theory, because this thing has so much memory and all these crazy technical specs, developers won't have to make a game and have it be this like sky-high vision or whatever that then gets compacted to a console. The Xbox Scorpio or whatever will just match that original vision, and you shouldn't get any frame rate drops or any sort of like, because one of the biggest things between why you would choose PC over console is that console games are always downgraded in some way. And I think Microsoft want to get around that by creating this ridiculously expensive system that can handle even the most top tier PC games or the most top tier over the top developers' visions or whatever. So in theory, if you're going to put the money down on this thing, it should reward you with the best games on the market, period.
Well, let's hope so. There's a lot still to be seen. Obviously, we'll be finding out more, one would hope, at E3, including a price, because I really think that the price is going to be what decides how successful this is.
And they could do with putting some first-party stuff on here, although it's very interesting to think that they would dominate and own the third-party side of things. And because maybe they're just giving up the ground to Sony, because Sony's first-party stuff, especially this year, has been outstanding. And it's like, if Microsoft were just like, you guys do that, we'll nail everything else. You want to play The Witcher 3? Come play it on Scorpio. And any third-party thing will hopefully run better on the Xbox Scorpio.
But as we said near the start, are people who already have their PS4, who have their friends on PS4, who play their games on PS4, who have their online subscription on PS4, really going to be tempted back for a superior third-party experience? And that's it. They're either going to have to be a heavily invested former Xbox 360 player who has a huge backlog they want to play, or someone who really has a hard-on for statistics and numbers and cares about this stuff.
True.
It's going to be difficult.
My whole thing, just a personal take on a lot of this, the way the industry's gone in the last couple of years, is I genuinely think, considering the momentum that the 360 had, a lot of people jumped to the PS4, mainly because Microsoft up the Xbox One reveal so bad. Like all that TV integration, motion controls, the Kinect, all that stuff. People were just so ready to throw the middle fingers and just grab a PS4 that I think at the heart of that, people are still quite like the Xbox and still quite like the idea of like, revisiting that 360 library. Maybe there's a bunch of gems that you didn't play that now play better on the Scorpio. There is a way to market this that directly combats the fact that people are not as tethered or tied to Sony as they maybe want to think that they are, kind of thing. So I'm interested to see how it goes. I mainly think a lot of people actively hate the Xbox One and are ready for the next Xbox. So as much as this is a modular thing, there's enough here to maybe market this as the next Xbox. Whether that'll be as cut and dry as when they moved from the Xbox to the 360, where Microsoft just went, the Xbox, the what? The Xbox? That's not a thing. And they just started, every game was just on 360. Maybe it'll be that again.
Okay, well, we'll see. We'll bring you more around probably E3 time.
Yes.
So thank you very much for watching. I've been Ben from What Culture.
I've been Scott from What Culture, but I must apologise if I got anything wrong because it's hard to pass all this stuff out.
And we'll see you soon.
We will see you soon.